In this video, we're going to be talking about how heavy you should be lifting and more specifically, how to choose the right weights for your workouts if your goal is to build muscle and get stronger. You want to make sure that you're not using weights that are too heavy all the time because you could end up getting hurt and you're probably not going to see the progress you want. On the other hand, you want to make sure that you're not using weights that are way too light because you're also not going to see progress. We're going to go over a couple different things in this video, starting with different exercise types. So we're going to go over 3 main exercise types, and how which exercise you choose is going to depend on how heavy you go. So certain exercises you're going to be able to lift heavier on, and certain exercises you're going to have to lift a little bit lighter on. Then we're going to go over something called the RPE scale, which is basically just a way to measure your effort in the gym. We're going to talk about how to make progress in the gym so you're continually building muscle and getting stronger week over week. And then last, we're going to go over warm-up sets versus work sets, the difference, and which ones you should track as you go through your workouts. Let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is go over different types of exercises. Now, any exercise you do is going to fall into one of these 3 categories. The first category are main exercises. These are typically exercises that are going to come first in your program, and they use multiple muscle groups and multiple joints. So examples of these are barbell squats, barbell bench presses, and barbell deadlifts. Typically, they're going to be done in the 3 to 6 rep range. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule, and sometimes you might do more reps or you might do fewer reps. But the reason you want to stick to lower reps on these main exercises is you want to focus on quality over quantity. So when you're thinking about something like a barbell deadlift, it uses a lot of muscle groups and it uses a lot of technique. So you need to make sure you're dialed in and you're doing the best you can to ensure that you're using the best technique possible. If you're doing sets of like 8, 9, 10, 12 reps of a deadlift, your form is probably going to start to break down as you get into the higher reps. Next up, we have supplemental exercises. So these are exercises that are meant to build your main exercises. They're things like single leg squats, dumbbell bench presses, and dumbbell Romanian deadlifts. Now they still might use multiple muscles and multiple joints. However, they're not going to require as much technique as those main exercises. So you're going to be able to do a little bit more weight with them. And again, the goal is to build up those main exercises. Last, we have our accessory exercises. So these are things like bicep curls, tricep extensions, and hamstring curls. And these exercises usually just use one muscle group and one joint. And they're meant to build up your supplemental exercises. So typically they'll be done in a little bit higher of a rep range. So one thing you should notice about these different exercise types is that the main exercises, because the reps are lower, you're going to be able to do more weight than the supplemental exercises where the reps are a little bit higher. And you're going to be able to do more weight for the supplemental exercises than you will be for the accessory exercises, just because the reps are a little bit lower here than they are here. So let's go through an example to help illustrate this. Let's say you start your workout with barbell deadlifts. You're a pretty strong person, so you end up doing 3 sets of 4 at 400 pounds. Because the reps are a little bit lower, you're able to really push the weight, dial in your technique, and you're able to do 400 pounds. Let's say the second exercise in your workout is a dumbbell Romanian deadlift. For this exercise, you're doing a little bit higher reps, so you're automatically not going to be able to lift as much weight as you would be for the barbell deadlift. Let's say you do 200 pounds, you do 100 pounds in each hand for a dumbbell. Then, following that up, you do hamstring curls. Now, because the reps are a little bit higher and you're only using your hamstring muscles, you're not using multiple muscle groups like you are for the dumbbell Romanian deadlift or the barbell deadlift. Now you're only able to use 100 pounds and you're doing 12 reps. So hopefully that makes sense, that depending on the type of exercise you do, that's going to dictate how heavy you lift. Now it's really important to note that regardless of the type of exercise you do, you still need to push the exercises pretty close to failure in order to build muscle and get stronger. If you finish an exercise and you think you had more than 3 reps left in the tank, you're probably not using enough weight to see results. It doesn't matter whether you're doing the hamstring curl, the dumbbell Romanian deadlift, or the barbell deadlift, you need to push those exercises pretty close to failure in order to see any type of results. Next, we're going to go over the RPE scale, which is going to help you gauge how hard the sets you're doing are. So next, I want to talk about something called the RPE scale. The RPE scale stands for rate of perceived exertion, and it's basically a way to measure how hard the set you just finished was. So you already know that you need to be lifting pretty close to failure in order to build muscle and get stronger. And the RPE scale is a way to measure that. So the scale goes from 1 to 10, and each number on the scale represents how many more reps you could have done with the weight you just used. So let's run through an example. Let's say you're doing a dumbbell bench press, and when you finish your set, let's say you're doing a set of 10, you finish your set of 10, you think you could have done 3 more reps with the weight you just used. So you think you could have done 13 reps. That would mean it was an RPE 7 on the RPE scale. Let's say you go up in weight for the next set, you finish your 10th rep, but you barely get it up, it's moving really, really slow, and you know that if you tried to go for another rep, you would not be able to complete it. That would be an RPE 10 on the RPE scale. Most of the time, you should be lifting between an RPE 7 and an RPE 10. So again, you should have between 0 and 3 reps left in the tank when you finish a set. If you finish a set of an exercise and you think you could have done 5 reps or more, that means it's way too light and it's not going to be challenging enough. All of the training programs that I write for my clients have an RPE prescription, so you always know how heavy you should be lifting. It's important to keep in mind that it doesn't matter how many reps you do in a set, the RPE scale still applies. So whether you're doing one of your main exercises and you're only doing 3 reps, or you're doing an accessory exercise and you're doing 12 reps, the RPE scale still applies. So let's say you finished your set of barbell deadlifts and you think you could have done 2 more reps with the weight you just did. That would be an RPE 8. Let's say you're doing your hamstring curls and you do 12 reps, but you think you could have done 14 reps. That would still be an RPE 8 because you had 2 reps left in the tank. The RPE scale is something that really advanced lifters kind of know how to use, but if you're just starting out lifting, you can start to play around with it and try to estimate how many more reps you could have done when you finish your set. A good practice and something I have all my clients do is after they finish a set, I ask them, how many more reps do you think you could have done with that weight? Usually after watching it, I have an idea in my head of how many reps I think they could do, and the more beginner of a lifter they are, usually the more out of touch those two numbers are. So a client might finish a set and I think, oh, they could have done 2 more reps with that weight, and they might tell me, oh, I couldn't do any more reps. That was an RPE 10. The more you train and the more you use this scale, the better you're going to get at estimating how hard the set you just finished was, and the better you're going to be at estimating how you can make jumps in weight. Next, I want to talk about how to progress your workouts from week to week. You should be actively trying to lift more weight every single week in every single exercise. However, it's not likely that you're going to do that for very long. If you're a beginner, you might be able to get away with that, but as you get more advanced, it's going to be harder and harder to advance in your program. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of ways that you can progress exercises. And the first way is going to work with your main exercises. So your barbell squats, your barbell bench presses, and your barbell deadlifts. And we're going to run through an example here. Let's say your program calls for 3 sets of 4 reps at an RPE of 8 to 9. So let's say week 1, you start out with 385 pounds after warming up. You do that for a set of 4, and it felt pretty good. It felt more like an RPE 8 than an RPE 9. So you go up to 395. That felt a little bit more challenging, felt like more like a 9. So you're going to keep that weight and do 395 again. Now, moving to week 2. You feel pretty good, so you start with 395 pounds, you do that for 4 reps, felt really good. Now you go up to 400 pounds, but maybe that jump caused you to overshoot your RPE range. So now that 400 pounds felt more like an RPE 10. So for the last set, you bump down the weight and you do 395 again. That's perfectly okay. You're just aiming to stay within that RPE range. Now let's say you go into week 3, you feel like you should be able to lift some heavier weight. It's week 3, so you go in, you start out with 400 pounds for 4 reps. Let's say that first set felt real heavy, felt more like a 9. It's okay to keep that weight for all 3 sets. Remember, you're just trying to stay within that RPE range. So you hit 400 for 4 reps for all 3 sets, that's fine. You're not always going to be able to go up linearly each week. You're trying to, but let's say you hit week 3, feeling tired, it's fine to keep the weight there. Now let's say you're going into week 4, you start out with 400 pounds for 4. Now you've had a week of rest, maybe you ate better, slept more, you're more hydrated. You come into the workout feeling really good, you hit 400 for 4, feel good. That was more like an RPE 7 or 8, so you undershot it a little bit. So you go up to 405, still feel good. Maybe that only feels like an RPE 8. You feel like you could have done another rep. So you go 410 for 4. So as you can see, week after week, you've gotten stronger and you've gone up weight, even though it's not completely linear. You didn't go from 385 to 395 to 405 to 415. Like, you see how the jumps are a little bit smaller. The second way I like to progress exercises in the gym works really well for your accessory exercises and your supplemental exercises. What I'll typically do when writing a program is prescribe a rep range. This way you can adjust the amount of weight you do and the amount of repetitions in order to make progress every week. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say week 1, you do hamstring curls and you do 90 pounds for 12 reps. Well, that 12 reps was probably like an RPE 9. It was pretty tough. So instead of adjusting the weight, you just adjust the reps. So instead of doing 12 reps, you do 10 reps, which is perfectly fine because you're still within that rep range. So let's say you do 90 pounds for 10 reps. Now that's pretty difficult. It's like an RPE 9. Instead of going down in repetitions because you want to stay within that range, you simply lower the weight and you do 10 reps again. So you can see how week after week you can play with the amount of reps and the amount of weight you do in order to stay within that RPE range and keep the intensity pretty high. So you're making sure that you're staying, that you're taking each exercise pretty close to failure, but by adjusting the amount of weight and reps, it's going to allow you to make progress a little bit quicker and make more progress instead of just adjusting the weight. So I really like using this method for your accessory exercises and your supplemental exercises, but I don't love using it for your main exercises. The reason is your main exercises, you can usually add weight week after week. With your main exercises, I would rather you keep the focus on quality over quantity. So I'd rather you do a really good set of 4 reps than try to push it and do a set of like 6 or 8 reps with the same weight. You're way more likely to injure yourself by pushing for those extra reps than by cutting the set at the amount of reps prescribed and trying to either go up weight or go down weight depending on how that set felt. So next I want to talk about warm-up sets versus work sets. Now, most programs you see are not going to have warm-up sets listed. They're only going to have work sets listed. The reason is because warm-ups are going to be very individual, right? So imagine somebody squatting 1,000 pounds versus somebody squatting 135 pounds. The person squatting 1,000 pounds is going to need a ton of warm-up sets to work up to that working weight. The person doing 135 pounds might only need like 1 or 2 warm-up sets to work up to their working weight. So it's a good idea to do a couple of warm-up sets, usually 1 to 3, before doing your working weight. So let's look at an example here. Let's go back to that 400-pound deadlift. Let's say for a warm-up you do 135 pounds for 6 reps, you do 225 pounds for 4 reps, and then you do 315 pounds for 2 reps. These warm-up sets do not count towards your work sets. So you're doing 6 sets in total, but those first 3 sets are just meant to warm you up to doing the work sets. Now let's say for the work sets you do 385 times 4, 395 times 4, and then 395 times 4. Those are the work sets. Those are the sets that are close to failure and that are going to help you build muscle and get stronger. So make sure when you're training that you're not including your warm-up sets in your work sets, because somebody might do 3 sets here and say, oh, I did my 3 sets, I'm good to go. Not so fast. These 3 sets are not challenging at all, and they're not going to help you build muscle or get stronger. Okay, last thing, just to wrap things up. To make sure that you're lifting heavy enough and you're lifting close enough to failure in order to see progress, a good way to check that is to video yourself and watch the last couple of reps, okay? The last couple of reps should slow down. So if you're doing a dumbbell bench press, the last couple of reps should slow down and they shouldn't be the same speed throughout. Obviously, if you're working with a coach, you could send videos to your coach. He or she can watch them and make sure that you're lifting heavy enough. That's always an option. Make sure you're doing your best with the RPE scale. So again, you're not going to be perfect with it the first couple of times you use it, but practice it. Make sure after every exercise, after every set you finish, you're asking yourself, how many more reps could I have done with that weight? You'll get better at it the more you use it. If you have any questions, reach out. I'd be happy to help. Thanks so much for watching.